Okay, hello and welcome to the video. In this video, I'm going to discuss something that is so big on the Democrats' minds, which is global warming, which I'm not at all denying the existence of global warming, nor am I even denying that carbon dioxide causes some portion of global warming. Exactly what I don't claim to know because it's not 100% because I've actually done the same calculations that they put into climate models by hand and come to the conclusion that there's other factors at play besides just CO2. But for example, the CO2 only actually causes around 0.6 watts of net warming, whereas we're actually experiencing several entire watts of net warming versus the long-term cold pattern, which was called the Little Ice Age, which I'm going to get into. Now, the Little Ice Age started in about the 14th century, where we got abnormally high rates of volcanism, namely stratovolcanoes, leading up all the way through Nova Rupta in 1911 or 12. I forget which. I think it's 12, the early 1912, which explains why the Mississippi River froze over in 1912 and 1915. All right. So the Little Ice Age ended in about 1915 was the last time that the Mississippi River froze over all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And I happen to know this because one of my great aunts actually won a ice skating contest on the Mississippi River during one of the volcanic winters caused by Nova Rupta. So, when the scientists tell you that we're warming, we've warmed so many degrees since since the pre-industrial era. The pre-industrial era was right smack in the middle of the coldest portion of the Little Ice Age, which was several degrees abnormally below the medieval warm period. All right. So if we've warmed by, less than 1.5 Celsius back from the Little Ice Age, then we're about the same as the medieval warm period, which is where we're actually supposed to be. Do you understand? So there's no climate catastrophe happening. We're about where we're supposed to be versus the Earth's long-term climate. The other thing is the climate scientists always oversimplify this stuff to preposterous levels, such as digging up microfossil data in mud cores and so forth from the bottom of the ocean. And as I pointed out, if the temperature of the ocean changes, the direction in which the ocean currents flows changes, and therefore the microorganisms get deposited in a different place in different amounts. Doesn't necessarily even mean that the surface temperature of the water was even different. When you change the temperature of the entire planet by a couple of degrees, yes, the ocean current is going to change, and yes, you're going to find some fossils in different places. But you can't really look at something that happened thousands or millions of years before modern instruments were created and say, aha, we found this fossil, 1,000 miles out of place from where it is in modern times. It wouldn't take that big of a difference for the ocean current to change that much over a period of a couple thousand or millions of years. Because if you have a million years worth of 1 degree temperature difference, eventually the current's going to do something a little bit different than what it does in modern times, right? That's not that big of a deal. And neither is 1 degree Celsius that big of a deal. All right. Hurricanes. This is a fact. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up. Go to wonderground.com, weatherunderground.com, and look under Dr. Jeff Masters' old blogs. There's a section entitled The 30-something Deadliest Tropical Cyclones in World History. And I actually sat down and cross-referenced them all with the warm periods and the cold periods, especially the volcanic winters. And it turned out that 28 of the 35 deadliest tropical cyclones in world history actually happened during global cooling events, not global warming events. That's right. 4 out of every 5 of the 35 deadliest tropical cyclones in world history happened during volcanic winter years, not global warming years. So something is wrong with the argument that global warming is causing stronger hurricanes. Matter of fact, it hasn't even caused the strongest hurricanes of the past 150 years. The longest lasting category 5 on record is not Dorian and it's not Allen in the Atlantic Basin. There was one that hit Cuba that was a category 5 for 5 consecutive days before the Saffir-Simpson scale was even invented. They know from the Cuban historical data. All right. And the strongest landfall in Atlantic Basin history is still the Labor Day hurricane based on pressure and is a tie for strongest based on wind speed. And that was 90 years ago, before most of the global warming even started. And they still can't explain why that one rapidly intensified so fast 90 years ago before global warming even existed. So it's not that I don't believe in global warming. I absolutely do. I know how to prove that the CO2 is causing warming, but it's only causing 0.6 watts per meter squared worth of forcing. Where are the other several watts worth of forcing coming from? It's not CO2. It's not magic either, by the way, but it's definitely not CO2. Because in my calculations, I actually doubled the capture rate of the CO2 to assume that the infrared photon travels into the atmosphere, hits the ground, and is then re-emitted and travels back out of the atmosphere and is captured both ways by the CO2, just to be safe. And that's how I got the 0.6 watts of forcing per meter squared when I did the calculations of it. So where is the net forcing actually coming from compared to the 400-year record since we've had minimum maximum thermometers? The answer is it's mostly rebound from the little ice age event, especially Tambora and the year without a summer. If Tambora were to happen again in modern times, I shudder to think, but we could probably lose 1 billion or more people within 1 year or two if an exact repeat of that of VEI-7 eruption actually happened. The largest eruption that's happened since then is Nova Rupta, which was a 6.2. Krakatoa was a 6.0, but Nova Rupta actually released more total ejecta into the atmosphere, about twice as much as Krakatoa. So, so what I'm getting at here is when you compare modern temperature data, and we just had the coldest winter on record in Louisiana last winter, by the way, in spite of global warming. That is not supposed to happen if we have a thermal blanket of CO2 causing a greenhouse effect. That shouldn't be happening, but stuff like this happens all over the world. Australia got record snowfall a couple years ago. You know what it takes to make snow? It takes water and cold, or the absence of heat. As we know, cold itself isn't actually a thing, but it takes water and cold to make snow. It doesn't take water and heat to make snow. It takes water and cold to make snow now, doesn't it? You learned that in the 3rd grade, probably. You should start relearning some of the stuff you learned in the 3rd grade. Yeah, it takes, you know what it takes to confirm that CO2 does cause warming? A very, very tiny amount of warming, that is. It takes calculus 1 in about 5 minutes on the back of a piece of paper. It doesn't take a PhD in physical science or meteorology or climatology. It takes calculus 1 in about 5 minutes on the back of a piece of paper by hand. It doesn't take a supercomputer to verify it. So again, I'm not denying global warming, nor am I denying that CO2 contributes to global warming. We know that methane and argon and nitrogen contribute a lot more than CO2 contributes. And we don't even really track those the correct way. Because, for example, methane floats to the upper atmosphere, and we're actually measuring it by flask at the surface of the ground, which is kind of stupid because 90% of all methane exists in the top 10% of a container. So that's kind of funny that the climate scientists don't even measure methane correctly. Well, it's more like saying that it's funny in a sad kind of way that they don't even know their own profession. Because the correct way to measure methane is to measure it top down, not bottom up. Whatever it is, less than 1% of the Earth's atmosphere is made of argon, but argon is like ridiculously powerful greenhouse gas. It's also inert, so it doesn't react with anything. It's also very hard to trap once it's in the free atmosphere. And it's not like we could remove 1% of the Earth's atmosphere anyway, even if we wanted to remove the argon. And the argon is natural and very stable, so I'm not saying remove the argon by any means. Um, I'm just pointing out that, uh, but yeah, did you know that following the Pinatubo eruption, which was misclassified as a 6.0 for a while, but has since been downgraded to a 5.0, following the Pinatubo eruption, it caused about a 1 degree Celsius cooling of the Earth, which lasted about a year and a half or two, depending on where you were on the Earth. Volcanic winter. And that was 1991. And the following year, 1992, Hurricane Andrew became the most destructive hurricane ever to hit the United States based on physical destruction, not based on death toll. Because, like I say, thank God Brian Norcross warned the Floridians ahead of time enough to save an awful lot of lives. But based on total physical destruction, Andrew is probably actually more destructive than Katrina. The only reason Katrina did so much damage is because of inflation and because New Orleans sits 6 to 30 feet below sea level, depending on where you are in the city. That is God's honest truth. If New Orleans had actually been above sea level like every other rationally designed city in the world, it wouldn't have taken very much damage from Katrina. Incidentally, the new levee that they built around New Orleans has already sank by an entire foot since it was made. They've now estimated that it's sinking by about 1 inch every year now. So, if you go out 50 or 100 years, it's not even going to protect anybody from even an exact repeat of Katrina will demolish the city again. Much less if the real worst case scenario hits. Because Katrina, I don't know if people realize this, but Katrina was by no means the worst case scenario hurricane landfall for New Orleans for several reasons. Number one, it missed the city. The city never even got 100-mile-per-hour wind. Number two, Katrina was died down significantly before it hit land. And number three, it was never max intensity to begin with, because the max Atlantic basin intensity is known to be 190 miles per hour, plus or minus a few miles per hour, depending on what the exact sea surface temperature and wind shear happens to be that day. Katrina was 175 at its max intensity. Allen was 190 at its max intensity. All right. Katrina made landfall at 145 miles per hour, and like I said, totally missed the city of New Orleans. Had the storm actually made a direct hit on New Orleans, and had the storm actually been as powerful as Hurricane Allen had been, it would have wiped the whole place clean. And I hate to say this, but it would have killed damn near everybody in the city. Warning or no warning. Because most people didn't even bother evacuating, either because they claimed they were too poor to evacuate, or because they were too lazy, or because they were in fact in a nursing home, or something of that nature. And Katrina was relatively well forecasted for the time period. They had a good 3.5 days warning that it was coming. The problem is half the people were drunk and didn't find out about it until the day before it made landfall. But it was well forecasted that Friday night, the previous Friday night. You can actually check the National Hurricane Center records of their forecast and see where the forecast cone was the previous Friday night, and it was almost exactly on top of New Orleans. But again, most of the warming we are seeing, I still say this, is in fact rebound from the Little Ice Age period. You had all of the volcanism from the 14th century through Tambora. Then you had Tambora caused the year without a summer. It got so cold that 1 million Americans starved to death and 1 million Russians starved to death. And then you had Krakatoa, which reset the Little Ice Age yet again, although 10 times smaller than Tambora. And then you had Nova Rupta and reset it again in 1912 and 1915. Can you imagine If a volcano erupted with the right composition, mostly sulfur dioxide and dust, to block out the sun so much that the Mississippi River froze out solid all the way down to the mouth of the Mississippi River today, if it got that cold again, we would be in deep shit, wouldn't we? We wouldn't be able to move our goods and services up and down the rivers anywhere in the country for an entire season or even an entire year. And we also would not be able to raise crops for an entire year or cattle. And this is another stupid thing. The global warming alarmists have pushed this so far that we're actually consuming over half of our corn crop every year as biofuel instead of using it for food or selling it to someone else on earth who needs it for food. There's plenty of oil in the ground, and burning biofuel is just as dirty as burning oil, if not more so. It takes 13 gallons, I think. The last time I checked it, I thought it was 13 gallons of water for every 1 liter of biofuel you produce. Think of how stupid that is. You're wasting 13 gallons of drinking water to make 1 liter of biofuel. And when you burn it, it's just as polluting as regular oil. You could have used the land to make food to sell to poor nations to keep those folks alive. Instead, you're burning half your food crop so you can drive automobiles instead of just pumping more oil out of the ground. Fire makes CO2, whether you get it from corn or whether you get it from oil. It makes at least the same amount of CO2 to burn corn as it does to burn oil. Freaking uneducated.